In this Roll for Crit preview, we're looking at a game that expects you to expand, evolve, and spread your influence in Solar 175. This is a legacy game in which there is a horrific, terrible, unnamed war that, when you start off at least, you don't know too much about. But what you do know is that you're a new corporation trying to take advantage of the void that has been left. This takes place in a futuristic solar system that you will recognize many of these planets and, of course, our own sun. And your job in each game will be to gain influence and try to get the most points. But because this is a legacy game, there are things we cannot show you right away. And, of course, the game will shift depending on what you do. Before we get into how you play, I want to quickly explain how the game ends. There are these outposts that you'll be putting around on the board, and once one player has removed all their outposts from this card, then you'll hit Endgame. Usually we'd have everyone's outposts here, but that's a lot of outposts, as you can see, so we just put one there to get the idea across.
This is a bag building game, which means everybody is going to have their own personal bag of tokens, which represent workers that you'll be able to use for actions. At the start of each round, everyone is going to reach in here and draw a number of these equal to the number of blank spaces shown here at the start of the game. That's 4, but you may be able to get more later on. We'll explain in a second. Each worker has a different symbol on it, and you will be able to place those onto these slots on your board that match, and those are your available actions for the turn. So all of the actions you're able to take are printed here. Each one of these separately labeled sections constitutes one action. In order to take one, you'll need to be able to completely fill in the slots there. So for instance, if you wanted to go here, you would have to place these matching tokens, and everybody places all of their tokens as they wish at the start of the round. Then you take turns carrying out one action at a time based on where you put them. If you do not have enough for an action, you can still place one of your workers there, and at the end of the round, it will just stay where it is for you to be able to build off on it for your next round. So that is an option for you if you don't know what to do yet and you want to just ensure that you'll have that partially done, so in case you don't draw the right tokens that you need. So let's just go over what all the different actions can do. First, why don't we talk about this card over here? There's actually one other action that's not on your board. This is your personal ship. If you place the matching token there, you get to move your ship somewhere else on the board. It can go anywhere you want, any of the spaces that are available. And if you go to certain places, you will be rewarded with certain resources. Some of these areas have minerals. These will be useful later on. And if you go to Earth, you'll be rewarded with 1 credit. Over here is where you keep track of your credits. There are 2 cubes in case you run over 10 or 20. You can keep track of exactly how many credits you have to spend. Next is this outpost action over here. So what we were talking about before, these are important because you want to get them onto the board for the game to end and hopefully for you to win. If you fill this space in over here on your turn, then you get to choose one of 2 outpost actions. There are going to be 2 outpost cards. Each one has a different action on it. The first one will allow you to build outposts, which means that you get them. You get to have them in front of you. And then once you have taken one of those, the card will flip over. It actually has a slightly different result on the other side. So every time somebody takes it, it's going to flip back and forth. The other card allows you to assign your outposts to the board. Again, it depends on which side it's on. Right now it says you can place 2, but they have to be in the same zone. The zones right now are designated by these blue and white lines. So there's 1 zone in the middle and 1 zone on the outer edge. And you can place these, again, have to be in the same zone, or on the other side, you have to place them into different zones. So it depends on what that says. These are going to be also important to getting points at the end of the game for some level of area control that can occur. Next, I will talk about these 5 actions right here because they all sort of go together. All of them are about getting you more workers of different kinds for your bag to make your bag building selection stronger. You'll see all the different types of workers are laid out over there. And when you take one of the actions, you get to take a worker from that pile depending on which section you put them in. All of them, of course, have different symbols. That's important because that determines where you're able to place them. The special unique one is this pink one. These are the algorithms because those are wild. You can use those to substitute for any other symbol that you'd like. So those are really powerful. And when you take one of those workers, you also get to take a bonus action indicated in the bottom of the card. The exception is the pink ones because they're really good already. They don't have a bonus action. The rest of them will allow you to do something else. For instance, move your ship. You get a little bonus for taking it. Or very importantly, if you take one of those tokens over there, you get to remove one of these outposts on your board, place it right away, and that means you'll be able to draw more workers in the following turn. So eventually, if you get rid of all these, you'll actually be drawing 8 workers at a time out of your bag, which obviously will give you a lot more options and flexibility.
Don't worry, there's still plenty more to go over. The next thing we're going to talk about is trade. That's this action up here. Now, there's going to be a trade row throughout the game with different cards for you to interact with. If you take the trade action, you get to interact with one of those cards. Currently, there are 3. One of them lets you buy or sell minerals at a cost of 3 credits. One of them lets you just gain a credit, and the middle one lets you build bases. This is very important because they give you points at the end as well as help, once again, with that control. The bases are over here. They have a cost depending on where the location is. Some cards can support bases, like this one here already has one for yellow. This one, however, has no cost for base because you cannot build it here. It's just not safe, I guess. Now, to pay the cost, you pay here. It's usually some form of credits and minerals. You will choose one of your bases and place it there. So we're going to go over here, for example, place the base. Depending on the one you remove, you get that bonus. So in this case, you get 2 credits. So you can choose your base not just for playing on a good location, but maybe for a certain action you want to do in addition to building the base. Finally, there's this little column over here where you see all the other actions. When you do them, you take them off and put them in your little discard card. And if you need to ever draw more workers, you put the discard pile back in your bag, pretty much like any other bag or deck builder. But these actions are a bit unique. You give up the worker in order to do them. So the first one is voting. Yes, there's politics in this game. Now, when you take the voting action, you're going to have these fun little tiles. You're going to secretly choose one of 3 groups, at least that we have right now, make a vote for them, and put it in the ballot box. Make sure no one else sees. At the end of the game, you're going to see who wins the most votes, which can drastically change how we're going to decide how things are scored. So maybe vote for whatever works in your favor. Next up is funding. Funding gives you these fun little tokens here, which will be worth points at the end of the game, possibly more. In fact, most things at the end of the game may be worth possibly more depending on that voting phase, which is why we hit it first. It really can change how things get into the end game scoring. Finally, there's the Peacekeeper Force. You can support them. Now, unlike the previous 2, which just go back to the worker bank, these can either be the pink, the blue, light blue, or the white. They go on this space here. For each one there, it will change the value of other tokens. You can see how there's so much variability in the final game scoring, so it's really weird to know, like, at one point, maybe like, oh, this is worthless. Next thing you know, it's worth 5 points at the end of the game. But you're going to keep going back and forth through this until everyone has done every actions. Then, as we said before, you start a new round, drawing new tokens until someone has removed all their outposts. Right before you do scoring, you'll do that vote count. And depending on who wins, they will double a certain value. So for example, the bottom one, the Federation, will make these worth 2 times more than they're usually worth. The middle one makes bases worth 2 times more. And the final one will make military work tokens worth 2 more, which I forgot to mention are gained as well whenever you take this action and place a token there. The megastructures will be worth a point for each of the algorithms here. Then you've got the bases. Bases will be worth, it's interesting, the number of points here, so in this case 2, plus the number of pilots there. Finally, there's presence. This is the area control aspect. For each zone, right now there's only the 2, you're going to look and see who has the most power in that zone. Because this is a legacy game, that doesn't mean you've won the entire legacy game. This is when we're going to get into a lot of the weirder aspects. You see, this is the back of a board. You're going to check mark whenever you won a zone here, or if you were the most to have bases or whatnot, depending on, and make different achievements. If you are able to fill this up, you'll win awards. And really, awards are actually going to be what you look at the end of the entire legacy campaign, who has the most campaign points. So that's really what you're the eye of the prize. It's not simply just winning. You want to be like the most in this zone, or make sure you're the one with the most bases. Because even if you lost, that could be the first one to get the bases, gives you more campaign points. Now, there are stickers here, obviously, that I could show off, and there's other things here that you can write down that you'll get to as you open more envelopes. We actually have all these lovely envelopes here you can see, and there's plenty of boxes. So this is a game that's going to grow, and if you haven't guessed from us talking about zones, there will be more zones as well. So your board is going to get bigger, the resource is going to change. These are also for stickers. When you put a sticker there, it lets you know to flip it to the B side, which will change what that card will be like. So there are plenty of weird things going on there. Of course, you'll be unlocking other weird things as well that we don't want to show too much. We do want to show off these little fun things, different ships that all have more unique possibilities. Yeah, put them on there. Why not? And so you, depending on later on what ships you decide to use, maybe they move differently, maybe they're slower, but they can gain more resources along the way. It's really going to be more up to you in customizing your company to fit your strategy.
So obviously there's a lot of stuff as it being a campaign legacy game that you'll unlock and explore. In terms of just the mechanics themselves from game to game, you're essentially your ultimate goal is getting points, as we mentioned, basically from collecting tokens from actions you can take over here, as well as placing bases and outposts and trying to control areas of the map. And then in service of that, you are trying to get more workers, get probably more varied workers, and be able to draw more of them each turn. And I think the way the workers are handled in this game is one of the most interesting aspects of it. You know, in a lot of this is essentially has kind of a worker placement element to it, although you're not competing with other players for your spaces. But usually in those types of games, obviously more workers is better. And one thing that I think is interesting in this game is that taking those extra workers for your bag, other than the pink ones that we mentioned, they also have an extra action alongside them that's beneficial. So it's nice that there's never a turn where it feels like you are having to give up an action to get another one of these. It always allows you to do something else. But then you're also in turn over here going to be spending those workers sometimes and getting rid of them for other things. So your bag will be constantly throughout the game growing and shrinking as you play.
What I actually really enjoyed about that is I felt like compared to maybe some other bag builders that I felt like it was much harder to have a bad draw. Like, sometimes you don't get what you want. But in this one, for example, let's say you really wanted a whole bunch of the engineers, you didn't get any. Well, just put these guys here, and next round, when you knew you had more engineers in the bag, then your next turn is going to be great. And of course, get an easy way to get more workers, easy way to make your bag leaner if you don't want to need something. So I think it gives you all the tools you'd want in the beginning. You don't have to fight over it for another player. So you can really focus on like, how do I spread my points to get the right things I need? Or do I want to end this quickly? Do I want to build up more bases or something? Of course, because of the legacy elements, I know I'm particular will be like that. There's achievement like, one of the achievements is they have only bases in the outer ring. That's all I got to do. Get all my bases out in this sector.
Right. Yeah, there's different things you can do that aren't just going for the win. Yeah, the thing of leaving them out on the board for next time it's so great. It's so nice because, like you said, you can guarantee. It's like in a normal game. Oh, I never draw the one that I want. Just keep it there and you'll be set up for next time.
Well, not only that, it keeps it out of the bag too. So, like, I know, especially with the wilds, you'd be like, I'm going to leave these here so I am more likely to draw the wilds again. So you can almost use it as like a way to, it's thinning your bag without thinning it, but it worked in a great way. And one of the things you can do is discard these if you don't want to use it, even leave it on the board just to put out an outpost, just to build. So it's like a weaker thing, but that does bring the game closer to an end. So it's actually still, at least in my mind, pretty powerful.
Yeah, from the looks of it, I think most people would look at this game and assume that this is like a 4X game with a lot of complicated...
It definitely feels like in some weird ways.
It kind of has that aesthetic to it, but it's not, there's no fighting. Yeah. You're not shooting each other.
It's like 2X.
Yeah, it's like 2X. Yeah, you're not hurting each other directly. It's really about gaining the resources that you want, and you are, of course, competing for territory. That's really where you're competing. But again, of course, this is just the first game. So as more elements are introduced, some of that stuff will change, and there will be very new components and cards and things added to it. So don't get too used to this.
I will say, I think that if you are a 4X fan, I think you'll still like this a lot because it still has the spirit of it, and especially with the legacy elements, you're going to be excited to hit new sectors, and when you do new things like helping build certain megastructures will change the story of the game.
We've got this great magazine here, which has all these articles with flavor text and things that you can learn
sort of telling what's
world.
happening each game.
Yeah, and then there's also in the back.
That's how you do the scoring, so you can look back and see how people won and make sure you did everything right.
I don't know if this will maybe be like an add-on or a stretch goal or something like that. You'll have to check the Kickstarter, but it's pretty neat the way they've done it. I'm sure there'll be a digital version.
And if you've played a legacy game before, you know the rulebook's going to have things like put a sticky here to mark a new rules added or to make sure you've done this achievement.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, if it's kind of cool because, I feel like bag building is usually associated with a lighter game. And this is definitely like a medium to heavy end, more complex style game, obviously, especially because it's legacy. So if you're playing with the same group over and over, that requires a commitment. But this is a fun element, I think, to mix into that style of game.
I think it does. It pulls them all together really well, which allows you to get geared into the game and accelerate. You don't have to spend too long. And because you're not killing each other, it's really more just about influence. You can count things and not feel like you're literally rolling a die to find out. And with the legacy element, then focus on what choices you're going to make. Obviously, being a corporation in a dystopian-ish future, you're going to have to make some choices that you may or may not be proud of.
Yeah, there may be some ethical dilemmas along the way. Also think it's pretty interesting with, the way that everything can be worth different amounts of points might change early on. Maybe you weren't thinking of going for military tokens, but you think someone else is, and if you may think maybe they're going to vote to make them worth more, maybe you want to try to vote so that doesn't happen, or maybe you just want to say, I'll just join the party and get them.
No, the voting phase is really fun because that's when you're like, let's see what happens. And then you didn't realize someone voted for one of the other parties. And you're like, this changes how things are worth. Oh, I was not expecting that.
Yeah, so it really can change who comes out ahead at the end. If this sounds fun to you, any of these elements coming together, you can go check out the game for yourself and see some of its final versions and what the different pledge levels are at the Kickstarter. We will have a link to it in our description, of course, down below.
Let us know if this is the kind of legacy game you're looking for, and we'll be excited from you in those comments down below. Till then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been a Roll for Crit preview.
Thanks for watching. While you're here, why don't you like the video, subscribe to our channel for more content, or you can check us out on Patreon, where if you support us, there are a lot of cool goodies like posting in our Discord channel. We've also got a podcast you can listen to. We have weekly guests, lots of board game discussion. Check that out as well.